In this video, I'm going to show you how to dimension the tool holder project, which is project 5.3 in Technical Drawing 101 with AutoCAD. Now, you first drew the views of this in chapter 4 in that book, and you followed this sketch and the dimensions on this sketch when you drew those views. So what we want to do now is apply these same dimensions to these views. And what we want to do is look for the best place to put those dimensions. And so primarily we'll be looking for what we call the profile views and that sort of thing. So I'll kind of explain as we go along. I've already created a layer named dimensions, which you're instructed to do in chapter 5. And I've also created a dimension style that has the settings found in the project 5.3 directions in chapter 5. So that tells us things like text height and arrow size and all that sort of thing. So I'm going to show you what I've set up. I'm on the Home tab in AutoCAD, and I'm going to pick on the annotation panel and pick on the down arrow right here. And I made a dimension style that complies with ASME, and I named it the ASME small radii. And so that means for anything with a small radius, I'm going to use this, or a small diameter. I'm going to click on this icon right here on the left side of that, and that's going to open up the Dimension Style Manager. And you can see that I have ASME small radii selected. Now what you would do is you would be picking on New, and you would only have the standard style, and you would make a new style named ASME small radii, and then you would put all these settings into it. So I'm just going to quickly review those settings. So rather than picking new, since I already have one, I'm going to choose modify, and I'm going to pick on the lines tab. And so the first thing I see right here is my baseline setting. I've set it to 0.4. I've set extend beyond dimension lines to 0.125, offset from origin to 0.062. So that's the offset from origin, that little visible gap that you have right there. And the extend beyond dimension lines is this line right here, how far it extends past that arrow. Symbols and arrows. I'm having closed filled on my first and second, and any leaders. I'm setting my arrow size to 0.125 and my center marks to line and 0.09 for the size. All right, the other thing that I have on this, let's see, actually nothing else that I need to change on this one. I'm going to choose text. My text style is standard, and on the standard text style I have Arial as my font assigned to that. My text height is 0.125. Under my text placement, I'm using centered for vertical, centered for horizontal, and left to right for the view direction, and horizontal over here under text alignment, which actually means that everything is facing the bottom of the page. The Fit tab, these are the settings that define whether I have the small radius type of leader or a large radius type of leader. So the settings for the small radius would be to choose either text and arrows on this button here, beside the dimension line on this button here, and not to check either of these boxes here. And the default, it says for our scale for dimension features, is 1, and we just want to leave that the way it is. Primary units. First off, my unit format is decimal, and my precision should be set to 2 decimal places. And I chose 2 decimal places because most of the dimensions on this sketch are at 2 decimal places of precision. There are a few that may be more, and we'll just set those as we need to. The other thing I want to check down here is this 0 suppression. I want to check the leading 0, and what that does is it keeps AutoCAD from putting a 0 in to the left of a decimal point when a dimension is less than 1 inch in value. Alternate units, you don't want to have this box checked. That would give you alternate units. It could give you like inches and millimeters or something like that. And under tolerances, we want none. So we are not going to be showing any tolerances on that, even though tolerances would probably be applied to this as it's manufactured. So I'm going to choose OK here, and then I'm going to go look at my large radii style. I'll pick on Modify again, and the only difference between the small radii dimension style and the ASME large radii dimension style are my Fit tab settings. So I'm going to pick on Fit. I want this to say Text. I want it beside the dimension line, and under fine tuning I want to check in both of these boxes here. My scale is still set to 1. So I'm going to pick OK. And now I'm going to pick on ASME small radii and pick Set Current because I'm ready to start dimensioning now. All right, so I have a highlighter and I have printed out this sketch, and as I apply each dimension I'm going to highlight it so that that way I can ensure that I get every dimension onto this drawing that I need. And the first dimension I'm going to place on here is actually the dimension from this corner here to this corner here. I'm going to use a linear dimension for that. So if I go up here to my annotation panel and I look right here and I pick on this down arrow right there, I have a bunch of dimension tools. I also have my dimension toolbar open over here, and because that even gives me more tools to dimension with that are easily accessible. But I'm going to pick on linear for this first dimension. I'm going to pick linear, and I'm going to pick at this corner right here first, and then I'm going to pick at this corner, and then I'm going to move out and place that. Now here's the thing, ASME Y14.5 says that the distance from this visible line here to the first dimension should be at least 0.4 inches, and whatever you choose, it should be consistent on all your views after that. So here's a good way to put it out to 0.4. Just select your dimension and you'll see those blue squares, which are called grips, and then pick on this one right here in the middle of the text, and then hold down with your left click button and bring it down, and bring it right down there and set it on the red line. And remember, the red line is the visible line. Then pick on it again and drag it straight up, and then let go of your pick button and type 0.4 and press enter. And what we'll do, it'll move this out 0.4 relative to this red line right here. So I'm going to press escape, and I'm going to mark that dimension that I have it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use two baseline dimensions, and baselines come off of an edge. And because I picked this edge to be my first edge and this to be my second, my baseline dimensions will automatically come off of this edge here. So I'm going to go over to my dimension toolbar, and I'm going to find the baseline dimension. It's that guy right there. Pick on that, and it's going to pick up right from this side. So all I have to do is go pick the next place that I want to dimension. So that would be that corner right there. I'm going to pick, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put the overall length in by picking on that corner right there. And at that point I can press escape. Now the distance between these is the setting in the dimension style that's called baseline. And so I set that to 0.4. So I'm also getting a 0.4 between each of my dimensions. The ASME standard says that the minimum is 0.25 inches between dimensions. I'm going to make mine a little bit more than that. And the main thing is, on all my views, I want all my spacings between dimensions to be the same. All right. Now, in looking at this, I know one thing about this 0.70, and that is that it should be what we call a reference dimension. So if I pick on it and then double click on it, actually you don't need to pick on it, I just need to double click on it. Press escape, double click. All right, you see that cursor in the front? I'm going to put a parentheses there, and then I'm going to put a parentheses on the back. And what that does is it tells the manufacturer that the 7.00 is only for reference. They should not use it to make the part. They should not put any tolerances on this, because they have other dimensions they can use to make the part where they'll apply the tolerances. One of those dimensions is 4 right here, and then we also know there's a dimension from this corner to the center of our hole right here, and then we know the radius to the end. So I'll look at the top view and show you. We know that the distance from this front edge to this point right here is 4 inches, and then the distance from here to the center of this hole is 2.25, and then from the center of this hole to this radius out here, that's a 0.75 radius. So we could add all three of those together, and it would add up to 7. But the thing is, each of those could have a tolerance, so it might not actually add up to 7, and that could come in conflict with this dimension down here if it had a tolerance on it, because those three other dimensions sort of could make a greater tolerance accumulation overall or a smaller one. So anyway, I hope that makes some sense, but just trust me on that. We want to make this a reference dimension. All right, so I'm going to highlight those three dimensions, and the next dimension that I'm going to place in here is going to be from this corner to this corner, and this is the profile view of that 1 inch height right there. I could put it over here on this view, but to me, I don't see this as the profile. I see the way this juts out right here, that this is the profile, and so that's why I chose to put the 1 over here instead of on the right side view. Now what I'm going to do is drag this back and set it right there on that visible line, and then pick and drag it out, type 0.4 and press enter, and then I have my spacing. Then I'm going to highlight that. The next dimension I'm going to put is going to be one of these down here, and so I'm going to do a linear dimension. I'm going to go from this corner here to this point right here, and then move down and pick. And this one I want to be 0.4 below this line right here, so I'm going to pick right here, and I'm going to drag this up to there, and then I'm going to come over here and drag it straight down and type 0.4. All right, press escape. And now I need a dimension between this point and this point, and I could put that 0.4 down from right here, but what I think I'm going to do is stack it down in here, and I want to put it 0.4 apart from this 0.325. So here's how you can do that. Select it, drag it down to the dimension line below it, then pick on it again, and then hold with your pick button, which is your left button on your mouse, drag it straight up, let go of the mouse, type 0.4 and press enter. Now I'm going to highlight both of those, and I think I have 3 more dimensions that I'm going to place on this view here. All right, the first dimension I'm going to put in is going to be the dimension from this point to the height that we have right here, and I'm going to move that out and just place that, because I'm going to manipulate that a little bit in just a second. That's the height of this cylinder that sticks up. You can see it over here on the sketch, and this is it in its top view. And so we wanted to use the profile view to show the height of that. And even though we might be able to see it over here, we don't dimension to hidden lines. So there it is sticking up, but all those are hidden lines, and we avoid dimensioning to hidden lines. All right, the next dimension I'm going to put on here is going to be another linear. So I'm going to use my dimension toolbar. At the very top of the toolbar is the linear dimension. I'm going to pick here, and then I'm going to move out and pick. Then I'm going to drag that back onto the visible line, then drag it back out, type 0.4, press enter. Another way you can do this is you could offset this red line right here, 0.4, over to the side, and then line this dimension up on that, and then just erase out the offset line. And so that's another way to get your dimensions out there. But what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to line this 0.25 and this 1.00 up. So first I'm going to see if I can just drag that text inside there like that. Then what I'm going to do, because this dimension is selected, I'm going to pick on that arrow, and I'm going to move it over here, and when it snaps to the end of that arrow, I'm going to pick right there and press escape. And press escape again. So there you go. This is a continuous dimension right here compared to a baseline dimension that I have up here. So I'm going to mark both of those, and next thing I want to do is put this diameter of 0.125. You can see the 0.125 right there. Now you might think you would put that in the top view on this, but actually, because this is a cylinder and not a hole, What ASME says about that is you should use a dimension in the side view to give that diameter. So I'm going to use another linear dimension. I'm going to pick at this corner, and I'm going to pick at this corner. I'm going to move out here like that, and I'm going to pick on it, and you see it's blinking right there in the front. I double clicked on it because what I need to do is go up here to symbols and add a diameter to that, and then press escape and pick yes. I want to save that. Because this is a diameter, and it's a diameter in the side view, but this is the way that ASME wants us to put those dimensions in. So I'm going to press escape, and then I'm going to pick this dimension and drag it down and put it on the visible line just like I have before, and then I'm going to drag it straight up, type 0.4, and press enter. I'm going to highlight that. And then we have a couple of dimensions over here only in this view. One I'm going to get is the height of this part and the width of this part in the side view. Other than that, I really don't see any other dimensions I should put in that view. So I'm going to use a linear dimension, and I'm going to go from this corner to this corner. It doesn't matter which corner right now that I go from. I'm going to pick on that, pick, bring it down to my visible line, drag it up, type 0.4, press enter, pick on a linear dimension again, and pick at this corner and come down to this corner, and that should be 2.75. Same thing, I want to pick, move it over onto my line, and then just drag it out, 0.4, press enter. All right. Be sure and save occasionally when you're doing this. You don't want to lose all the work that you've done here. Okay, so I'm going to mark both of those dimensions as done, and now I'm going to focus on the top view, and we just have a few dimensions actually we need to put in up here in the top view. One is the 2.75 dimension, and that will go from this corner here to the center of this hole. So I'm going to place that by picking right there on that corner, and then I'm going to go to the quadrant of that hole right there, or that circle. I'm going to pick, and then I'm just going to move straight down. Now the reason I dimension to the quadrant and not to the center is, I mean, they're lined up, but if I dimension to the center, it will fill in this gap around my center mark, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to pick on my dimension, and I'm going to drag it back to that point where it's in line with this line right here, that visible line. Then I'm just going to drag that down, type 0.4, and press enter. All right, I'm going to do the same thing over here. I need a dimension according to my sketch from, let's see, the end of this slot right here to this point where that inclined plane begins. So I'm going to dimension from that point right there to right there. I'm going to move straight down and pick, and that should be 2. And you know, the thing I want to do, I want to line these two up. So one thing I could do is just select that dimension and then pick and hold on this arrowhead, and then move over here and pick on, don't pick, just line up on the end of that arrow right there. And then as I move across, you're going to see a dashed line, just a dot line. That means they're lined up. I can pick again, and now they're lined up. So what I used was actually this tool right here, polar tracking. That's what I was doing just then when I selected and picked that, and then came over here and acquired that point, and then followed the dash line across. That was using a polar tracking line right there to do that. All right, I'm going to mark both of those dimensions. Press escape. Another dimension that I need is going to come from this edge right up here. I'm going to pick here and go to this corner and move out right there. Now, the reason I'm putting that 0.75 up there is because on the sketch it's coming from that back edge at 0.75 and not the front edge. So I want to put it on from the back side over there. I'm going to pick on that and drag it back to my corner, and then I'm going to pick right here and drag it out, type 0.4. And now I want to do a continue dimension, or what we call a continuous dimension, but when you go over to the tool, this is the continue tool, it just says continue and not continuous. pick on continue, and that's going to pick up right where that dimension ended, and just pick at that corner right there. Press escape. So those are going to be lined up just the way I want them at 0.4, right? Okay, so I'm going to highlight both of those. And so I have these two radii right here. These two, there's a radius here and a radius here, radii being the plural. So what I'm going to use for this is the radius tool. So there's a radius tool right here. You can also go up to here and pick on the down arrow and pick radius. And just pick on that radius and move out down into here. Now, if you want to line it up, you could go over here and just park on that endpoint and acquire that. You can see that dotted line that's coming across right there. I could kind of just pick right there, and you know, I'm just keeping everything lined up, trying to keep it as consistent as I can. Now, when I use the radius command, it adds some extra center lines. You can see that because they come in with their own center lines. Now, because there are two of those radii, I need to double click on this, and I need to say 2 and a capital X. I need to type that in there and a space, and then just pick out here to the side. All right. Now, your instructor may want you to get rid of this line and this line, because really all we need on our center mark is just these two center marks for that radius. The problem with that is because this was put in using a dimension, it put in, you know, a full center mark, and those center marks are part of the dimension. So if I try to erase one, it's going to take out the entire dimension. So this puts a drafter in a dilemma of, do I explode this dimension and break it all into separate parts where it's not editable anymore as a dimension, just so I can erase those out, or not? Well, you know, I'm going to do that. I'm going to just go ahead and explode that and enter, and then I can pick here and I can pick here. And it actually has some extra lines in there that I'm going to do a left to right pick on. Remember, if you go left to right, it only gets the things it completely encloses, and you're seeing I'm getting that shorter center line right there. Pick, press delete. Now, I know there's an extra line in there, so that cleaned all that up. Now, I know people will disagree about whether you can explode a dimension. I don't think it's a great idea, but I know I'm not going to need this again to behave as just one dimension. It's not that big of a deal. But there are offices where they just, one of the rules is they never explode dimensions. So you should know that. It's just, you know, as long as you know what you're doing, that, and whatever the office does, that'll be up to, you know, to the procedures of your office. Okay, so I've marked off that dimension there. And so I need a couple of dimensions over here. I need a diameter dimension right here, and I need that for the diameter of that hole right there. So I'm just going to bring that out and place it maybe about right there. Okay, so there's the diameter of the 0.75. Now, because this is a hole, I can put a leader on it and point to it. Remember that because the larger circle is a cylinder, I had to dimension it down here in its profile view. All right, the last dimension that I need at this end is this radius right here, and that's a fairly large radius. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my radius tool, and then I'm going to pick on that large radius, and I'm going to move out in this direction right here. Now, if I want to be a stickler for things, I could even come in here and park on the corner. This is called the leader's landing. Some people call it a shoulder. Park right there. Follow my O-track line straight up and pick, and that actually lines those guys up. Now, I don't need a 2x on either of those because there's only one. There's one hole and one radius that we have right here. But like I said, this is a fairly, pardon me, this is a fairly large radius. And so what I want to do is change its style to the large radius style. Okay, so a quick way to do that is to pick on, go up here where you're in your Home tab, but pick on your Annotate tab, pardon me, and then select the dimension. And if you look right up here in the dimension panel, you'll see that is on the ASME small radii style. If you pick on the down arrow, you'll have the option of your other styles, which are standard and large radii. Now watch what happens as I toggle between small radii, which is what it's on now, and large radii. See what that arrowhead and what that leader line is doing? So I'm going to pick right there. Oh. So what I like to do is when I have a large radius, rather than just point to it, I think it's more descriptive to go ahead and put this style of a leader in there. And so that's why I go to the trouble of making that other dimension style, so that I'll have a large radius dimension style that I can apply in situations like that. All right, so I'm going to mark these dimensions off. And I believe that with that, I have every dimension, with the exception of my material, that I have every dimension that I need. So the next step is to add this note that I've put in right here that tells us that the material is 6061 aluminum. And then I also always include this other note that says interpret the dimensioning and tolerancing and symbols in accordance with ASME Y 14.5-2009. This is the dimensioning standard that we're following. And in the ASME standard, if you're following that standard, it suggests that you put a note like this on your drawing and inform people that are working with this drawing that it does comply with the standard. So that way, if they have a question about how to interpret something, they could go look it up in that standard. So here's how we put that note in. I'm going to go back to my Home tab. I'm going to go to the Annotation tab and find the text icon and pick on that down arrow right below it and choose multi-line text. Then what I'm going to do is pick and let go and move over, and what I'm defining is an area where I can place a paragraph of text. And so I'm just, I don't know for sure how big it's going to be, although I've got a good idea because I've already typed it. A lot of times you don't know, so you just have to kind of guess. So I'm going to make a rectangle. I'm going to pick right there, approximately that size. Now I've got a cursor blinking right here, and I can see that the cursor text is a lot bigger than this text here. I want this text to be 0.125 because I want the text in this note to match the text in my dimensions. So what I have to do before I can start typing is I have to go up here into the ribbon, and right here is my text height. And right now it's set to 0.4 inches, which is really tall. So I'm going to highlight that 0.40, and I'm going to type 0.125 and press enter. And you can see that my cursor just got a lot smaller. And I'm going to put caps on. Let me put my caps lock on. Notes, unless otherwise specified, colon, and then a 1, and material, blah, blah, blah. I would just keep typing until I type this entire note in here. Okay. When I get it all typed, get both of my notes in there, I would pick on the Close Text Editor button right up here, and that would lock that in. Now, I'm not going to take the time to type that because I already have it typed, and so you can see what you need to type in your note. Now, there's something we need to consider about this because we have our views here and we have our note. And these are all in model space. So what we need to do is pick on Layout 1 and go to Paper Space and see how our views look like inside our border, because we have a border and we have a title block and everything. So here's the first thing I want to check is that my notes are to the left of my title block and my tolerance block. The other thing I want to check is I want my notes to be lower than the top of my title block. So this is just a rule that I give to my classes. Companies have different rules. I've worked at companies where they say you can't draw in this area because we save that area for something else, like revision history or something like that, which we haven't discussed, but I'm just saying there can be rules in an office like that. So what I would like my students to do is just put these notes to the left of the title block and below the top of the title block. And then we want to look at our views, and we kind of want to see, um, are they placed so that they're kind of equally spaced and everything. These actually look pretty good. Now, I'm in paper space, which means I can edit things that are in paper space, and all this text that's in the title block is in paper space, and so is my border, and so is my title block. But my views and my dimensions I can't select because they are in model space. And I can also tell them in paper space by this icon right here. When I'm in paper space, instead of seeing the UCS icon, I see this triangle that says X and Y. And also over here on the status bar, I see the word paper, right? But if I go into this area, in the white area in there in the field of the drawing, and I double click, I will be put into model space. So I can actually edit things while I'm in paper space as long as I've activated model space. The way I know I'm in model space is, look at my icon down here. That's my user coordinate system, or the UCS icon, and I've lost that triangle that I had over here. I also have the word model right here. So I'm going to press escape. So whenever you're in model space, you can select your views, and you can use the move command, for example, and pick a point, and you can move your views around and center them a little bit better, or whatever you need to do. And when you get them where you like, if you get it where you like it better than it was, just pick and then press escape. Now, remember, you're still in model space, so you can't edit the text in your title block. You've got to get back into paper space to do that. To get into paper space, just go down here and pick on the word model. Another way to get into paper space is to go out into this area outside your sheet and just double click, and that will take you also back into paper space. All right, so of course I would delete out this sketch that I have in the corner on my final drawing, but with that, I'm going to go back to model space real quick. That completes the dimensioning for the tool holder. So I hope this helps you out.